213. So here we're going to find more patterns in the multiplication table, but these are not related to even and odd. And in some ways, this is really even harder. It's basically related to the properties of the operation, which is associative, commutative, identity, or it's related to the relationship between facts. Like the 2's, how the 2's are related to the 4's, something like that, okay? You with me? All right, so I just want you to have this in your brain. Like, it's not as complicated as it seems. There are basically 3 ways you can describe patterns in the multiplication table. Odd and even, the properties, which is really just commutative, identity, and 0, and then the relationship between facts, which we've already done some of, right? Like 2's makes 4's, 4's makes 8's. We already know this. Yeah? Multiplication Monday?
We try really hard.
Okay, great. So we've been looking for patterns in multiplication. What have we noticed so far? Hopefully there's a whole lot of conversation around odd and even. How does the multiplication chart work? Just having a quick review. Like, okay, this number here is 3 times 6. Review that, okay? And so now, we might see a multiplication chart where these facts are all circled, and we want to think to ourselves, what's the relationship? Like, what does this teach us about these certain facts? What can we see? And to do that, we're actually going to follow these 3 steps. We're going to write out some of the equations that we're seeing. Then we're going to look for similarities in those equations. And finally, we'll write a sentence. And you guys, I'm kind of iffy. I haven't tested this out with kids yet. Thank you for making that face. It's like, well, you're like, yeah, I know what you mean. That I think the equation is all of the equations, blah, 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 blah. Or all of the products, blah, 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 blah. But I'm not sure you're going to have to feel it out. Something like this, okay? So let's just do this really quickly. I'd start by being like, what's this one?
1 times 1.
Great. What's this one?
2 times 2.
Great. What's the next one?
3 times 3.
We'll do a few. Okay. Now we're going to take a step back and kind of look for similarities. What do we see?
We're doing doubles. No, sorry.
We're multiplying this thing.
Doubles would be if it was 1 plus 1. And, you know, honestly, play that out.
Because they're going to say doubles.
Yeah,
Because
and
they
do you
are
know
gonna say
what?
doubles.
Just like our doubles in
Yeah.
addition have a special name, these have a special name.
Squares.
Squares. Why are they squares?
They make a perfect square.
Each side is the same, and squares have equal sides. Woo! Isn't that cool? So I see the diagonal of the multiplication chart, right, is all the square numbers. A number times itself. Great, let's do another one. A lot of this is just practice, right? But we follow the same steps. So I'm going to write out the equation, I'm going to look, I'm going to make some kind of noticing. You with me? Awesome. The next day, I'm just going to go into the next day. You basically do the exact same lesson, except for with an addition table this time. So just like with the multiplication table, I wrote out my facts, I did some noticing. That's what you do with the multiplication or the addition table, right? So I'm going to write these all out. What do I notice? You're going to let them try and do this themselves. You don't need to do a whole lot of buildup because you did it the day before in the multiplication table. Now, with that said, this lesson is kind of a 2-parter. The first part is this. Let them work on it. Then what's the other thing we really need to talk about when it comes to addition?
The properties?
That's all going to be here. We still need to look at odd and even. And so the next thing you're going to do after you've let them kind of play for a little bit is say, here are all my evens. Do you see that? Or no, here are all my odds. Odd. Here are all my other odds. And here are my odds plus my odds. Do you see that? Odd plus odd. Odd plus odd. Odd plus odd. Odd plus odd. And you might have them with a chart, right? We can make a conjecture and then talk about why it makes sense. What do you think you would say? What would your conjecture be about odd?
About
plus
2 equal groups.
Yeah. So, the sum, this is how we would write it, the sum of two odd numbers
I don't have that page.
Is it on?
is always what?
Even.
Even. Whoa. Why do we think this makes sense?
Because you're taking two groups of the same amount and putting them together.
Now, it's not necessarily the same amount. Like, look here. This is 5 and 7.
Oh.
You're doing odd.
Let's draw 5 and 7. 1. Remember? 1,
But if
2.
one extra out on both,
Yeah.
then you put them together
yeah.
and have a buddy.
Yeah,
So it wants
exactly.
them to write.
Does that make sense? I don't know if you want them to type that into their constructed response, but yes, right? If I break up my odds, they're each going to have one left over, and those can be split into two as well. Great. And so then we're going to ask them to make a conjecture about even plus even, and their XSIP will be asking them to make a conjecture about even plus odd. Okay? Kind of cool. Kind of huge. All right, thanks.